Hello again. This is the first talk of a series learning from the first Christians. Firstly, we need to see the background of the story I'm going to talk about today. We're talking about the 4th century, so roughly 300 years after Christ himself. And actually, very specifically, we're going to talk about 2 years. We're talking about the year 303 and 305. Now, at that time, the Christians were persecuted for their faith. That was because the emperor of that time, called Diocletian, wanted the Christians to deny Christ, to abandon their faith. He decided that their books should be burnt, their churches should be destroyed, and they were not allowed to hold gatherings, prayers, and masses. So, if we are in the shoes of the Christians of that time, just try to think, you've got a family, you've got your wife, you've got your children, and you're a Christian. You know you're going to be called to say whether you're a Christian or not, and you need to make a decision what you're going to do. But if you say you're a Christian, you're going to go to prison, you're going to be killed, your house is going to be confiscated. You don't know what your wife and your children are going to do and what's going to happen to them. So you understand what kind of pressures the Christians were under at that point, you know. And it is true that many Christians at that time professed their faith, and we've got loads of Christians at that time. But it is also true that many Christians abandoned their faith and they did what we call apostasy. They apostatized. They abandoned their faith. They said they were not Christians, although they were. So this is the background of this story. And on that background, please meet today's character. We're going to talk about 49 men, women, children, and a priest. These people lived in North Africa, which was very Christian at that point. You probably know this is the countries like Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Libya these days. They're Muslim today, but they were thriving Christian countries at that point. Now, we are in a wee place called Abitinae. Abitinae was a township. The archaeologists have not found the place yet. We only know it existed, and we only know that something really important happened there. And what happened was this group of 49 people, 49 Christians, held a mass in a house. They were not allowed to do that, but they held a mass there. They were taken by surprise. They were arrested, taken to the capital, which was called Carthage, a big city there. They were tried there, tortured, and eventually killed. And we know that as they were dying, they were asking God to forgive their killers. That is the story. But what is the message? Here I come to the message of the Martyrs of Abitinae, as we call them. Well, we've got the Acts of the Martyrs, which means we've got their story. Somebody wrote it for us at that very time. Now, what happened was, before some of them were killed, they were asked why they held a mass. They were not allowed to do this. Why did they do that? So I quote now. The proconsul, who was a Roman official, asked one of the Christians, "Why have you received Christians in your home, transgressing the imperial dispositions?" And that Christian answered, "Is because we cannot live without the Sunday Eucharist." Amazing stuff. We cannot live without the Sunday Eucharist. And then the same man, the proconsul, asked a man called Felix, a young Christian of the time. He says, "I'm not asking you if you're a Christian, but if you have taken part in the assembly, or if you have a book of the Scriptures." And the answer was, "O foolish and ridiculous question of the judge, as if a Christian could be without the Sunday Eucharist, or the Sunday Eucharist could be celebrated without there being a Christian. Don't you know, Satan, that it is the Sunday Eucharist which makes the Christian, and the Christian that makes the Sunday Eucharist, so that one cannot subsist without the other, and vice versa?" Amazing words of a young Christian who knows that they cannot be a Christian without Mass. They cannot be a Christian without the Sunday Eucharist. Here I come to our life now. What are the Abitinian martyrs, or the martyrs of Abitinae, telling us today? Well, they're not just saying to us that the Sunday Mass is important, and we can't be Catholics, we can't be Christian without feeding on Christ's body and blood on a Sunday. But I think they're asking us, they're asking me as a priest as well, now, is there any longing in me for Mass? Or do I just come to Mass to tick it off, to be at Mass because there is a commandment, or because I do it every Sunday and don't do much thinking about it? Or is it because in my heart there is a deep longing for Christ, to be with him, to receive his body and blood? And I think most of us come to Mass regularly, unless we're ill, or unless there is no chance to get to Mass because there is a pandemic and because there is a dispensation. I can't get to Mass, there's not enough room for me. But when I come, am I doing this because I'm longing for Christ, because he's so important to me? Or is it because I just come without doing much thinking about it? So today, the Martyrs of Abitinae are asking us, is there much love for the Eucharist in you? Is there much longing for Christ in you? Thanks very much.